Mr. Kim had mentioned some of the losses that he had experienced in his past. In this session, the therapist and Mr. Kim will be dealing with the topic of his relationship with his father and his mother's death. Throughout the session, the therapist will look for signs of transference in order to show the formation of a therapeutic alliance.
Mr. Kim, thank you for coming to see me today. You mentioned some significant events that have happened in your past, like the loss of your mother, your first wife and child, and your newborn twins. I know that these are painful memories, but I think that addressing these past experiences will help us understand some of the issues you're currently dealing with. Would you be willing to discuss any of these events today?
Fine.
Which one of these issues has been on your mind most since we last spoke?
My mother and father.
And what have you been thinking about them?
Been thinking about my mother and how she died when I was only 3.
Yes, you mentioned she died in the Korean War.
Yes, I was raised by my father.
Tell me about your relationship with him.
Well, my father was a farmer. He worked in the fields.
Was it your family's farm?
No, he worked for another family. He was gone for many hours. He was gone all day. He wouldn't come back until late at night. I would usually play with my neighbor friends until he came home.
What would happen when your father came home?
Most of the time he was tired. He didn't want to talk to me. He just didn't feel like talking to me that much. Usually we just eat and go to bed without much interaction.
And how did that make you feel?
Made me feel lonely. I miss my father during the day. He just didn't have a chance to get to talk with me.
I can see you felt lonely as a child because your father worked all day and you didn't spend any significant time together. What are some moments that you remember with him?
Well, one time at dinner, accidentally I dropped a napkin, and all of a sudden he became very, very angry and enraged. He yelled at me, threw my dinner on the floor, and made me clean it up, and then after that sent me to my room to go study.
And what would you do when this happened?
I tried to just stay out of his way. I ended up studying a lot, and that was one of the few times he wouldn't yell at me, was when I studied and got good grades.
Well, it sounds like you and your father had many difficult times. Can you think of any positive memories with him?
Well, one time in school, they listed the students on the blackboard from best to worst, and my name was up near the top, and I went home and told my father, and he smiled and gave me a nod of approval, which made me happy.
It appears it meant a lot to you.
Yes, it did. Those happy moments didn't come that often for me and him.
Mr. Kim, I'd like you to take a few moments to relax. Now, tell me what comes to your mind when you think of your father.
At this time, the therapist is using a technique called free association.
Well, I was alone so much. Oftentimes I wondered why. Why didn't he want to talk to me? I mean, I didn't understand why he didn't want to. There's so many questions that I have about my mother. So many. Why she wasn't there, what happened to her, and why he didn't want to answer them. I didn't know anything about her. I felt like I wanted to know. And seeing other families and friends with family members, it was with their parents, it was hard to see that. And I was so young when she died. I was only 7 years old. when on one occasion I asked my father about her, and he became very, very angry. He yelled at me and told me that she's gone, and told me to never ask about her again. And I was sad and angry. I felt like I wanted to know. I felt like I had the right to know who she was.
Must have been very hard for you not to discuss her with your father.
Yeah, I learned not to talk about things. It was just easier that way to keep quiet about it.
Well, how did you cope with those feelings?
I guess I hid my feelings inside, because that's what a man should do.
You lost your first wife and child when you were 19. How did you deal with those feelings?
Well, I was strong. Like I said, I didn't show. I learned how to not show a lot of feelings, and I moved on, and I went back to school to become a history teacher.
I know that you and Mrs. Kim lost your newborn twins as well. How have both of you dealt with that loss?
Yeah, it was very hard for her. She cried a lot, but I stayed strong.
I've noticed that you tend to avoid your feelings during hard times. Sometimes when a person experiences a lot of pain, they tend to push these feelings away so that they don't have to deal with them. Mr. Kim, it seems like you're repressing your thoughts and feelings. What this means is that you're not consciously aware of these feelings, but they are still there and affect your present behaviors. These repressed feelings still need an outlet and are very commonly expressed through anger.
I guess I never thought about that. I guess that's why I feel angry sometimes.
I think that's a great observation. Mr. Kim, I feel like we've made a lot of progress today. Well, our time has come to an end. Let's continue this conversation next week.
Thank you. Okay.